Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I'm interviewing Michelle MacDonald for the first time. She is a WBFF competitor and competes at a very high level with a pro card. She also has her Wonder Woman official coaching, which she works through and has helped thousands of women get into amazing shape, and is the founder of Tulum Strength Club over in Tulum. And we talk a lot about kind of developing muscle and losing fat and getting in fantastic shape for the older female, 40 plus, and how she helped her mother of 70 years old get into the best shape of her life. So if that sort of content sounds interesting to you, be sure to listen in. Let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I have Michelle MacDonald on the podcast. I think many of you hopefully recognize the face, or you'll recognize the voice, or maybe the name. And if you don't, you're in for a treat, because we're going to be touching on some stuff that I think is unique and hasn't been touched on the podcast before. And I think Michelle has a really valuable message, and she's a great spokesperson as well, and a great talker I've heard and I've seen also on Instagram. That's where I've really found out about Michelle. She is a WBFF. She was the WBFF 2020 USA champion. I know you've been competing with the WBFF for quite a while. I think many of the listeners will be aware of what that is. She was the founder of the Tulum Strength Club gym in Tulum, of course. And I'm always gutted that I have visited Tulum and I didn't venture over that way. So I just was completely ignorant to everything that was going on over there. And the Wonder Woman official owner of that as well, which is a coaching service, which maybe some people have heard of. And I know Michelle is a Revive Stronger listener as well, which is always lovely. And like, it says a lot about a person, I think, when they tune into this show already. So I'm really glad that we can have this chat and we can talk a bit more, but I'll hand over the mic to you, Michelle, because I know there's a lot more about you and your background to what I described there. So yeah, let the listeners know a little bit about you and how you got to where you are right now. Almost like it's probably a long story, but maybe give us a bit of a summary, or the highlights.
All right, let's give a highlight of the highlights. You know, when you get to be 50, it's the journey can be really, really long-winded. I think, you know, first I would just kind of say that I got into bodybuilding when I was 40, and I had spent 10 years, you know, really throwing myself into yoga. I competed in yoga. I know that sounds odd to people, but and I've been an athlete my whole life. But when I was 40, I kind of, you know, 39 actually, I was sort of looking around me at a lot of the advanced yogis, and, you know, we're doing all this yoga, and, you know, we kind of pride ourselves in, you know, not eating, because we're always doing yoga. And I thought, gosh, you know, I'm not really liking how the body's aging here. Like, I'm putting all this effort and I'm doing my prana breathing and, you know, manifesting energy and all that stuff, but I feel like my body is disappearing, right? And I went to a show, it was an NPC show, Jay Cutler Classic, I think in Boston, and to support a girlfriend of mine, and she had lost 20 pounds, and she was competing as a bikini model. She looked beautiful. And I'm at this show and I'm looking at all these girls. They were younger, mind you, like, you know, 20, I was, they were much younger than me, but I'm looking at all these girls and I'm thinking they're doing something, because they all kind of look the same. They've all got these, you know, they've got tone and shape and abs. And so that really interests me. So I actually worked with her coach, and it was just a really simple online program, $65 a month, and a really safe sort of generic meal plan. It was my first time following a meal plan. You know, the typical egg whites and 2 strawberries and some green peppers and oatmeal. And I actually I was already a chef at the time. And I just finished graduating from a culinary school in New York. And I said, I can't eat that kind of food. I'm a foodie. I was a foodie. That's where my name, Your Healthy Hedonista, came from. Actually, it's from my passion for food. So before I knew about macros and all that stuff, and if it fits your macros, and I said, listen, how much protein, carbs, and fat do you want me to eat? And I'll hit that. based on my cooking. So I was eating like filet mignon with a balsamic butter sauce and mushrooms and all kinds of weird and wonderful things during my prep. So I got started on macro based meal planning that way, and I just fell in love. I felt like that was the missing link. I fell in love with bodybuilding. I fell in love with the guidance on nutrition. This idea of dosing at your body, every 2 to 3 hours of protein. It instantly made a big difference because we didn't really, from a yoga background, we really didn't think of protein. We didn't think of macros in general. It was just, eat and be as flexible as possible. So being 40 and started to introduce more protein, I think I've always been eating around 130, 140, 150 grams of protein. I was 104 to 106 pounds when I started. It just really made a difference. My body responded super well. I'm kind of a, ecto-meso body type, which is, it has its pros and cons, right? Like it's hard to gain muscle, but you can gain muscle. Really easy to shred down. And with a good program and a good eating regimen, like being, not forgetting to eat, but being on par with eating, it really changed everything for me. And so the first year I love that I competed in 5 federations, actually. I flew up to Canada. I was living in Boston. I flew up to Canada. I competed in drug tested federation, IDFA. And I loved back in the day, it was a really robust federation. I think it still is doing well. I think it survived the COVID. I did an MPC. Not an MPC, but a OPA, which would feed into sort of IFBB. I tried that, and I tried their bikini. I did fitness. I tried bikini. I tried this federation called SAF, and I did the WFF, and I won or placed in the top 3 in everything except for the WFF. The WFF, I was like in the last call outs of like 4 call outs, but I just, I loved how competitive it was. I'm a competitive athlete, and I loved how competitive it was. I loved seeing physiques that were really inspirational and yet very feminine. So it took me a couple of years to get my pro card with them. So I kept competing in other federations. I hired a new coach who's now my husband, and he trained under really great Olympic coach and Olympian Yannick in a place called the Bat Cave in Montreal. It's a little tiny, you'd love it, a really tiny little gym that just had old equipment, clanging equipment packed everywhere. All these athletes coming in, a lot of them, Olympic level athletes. So it was a really great place to learn and get a foundation on bodybuilding, on strength training. It was very educated gym, and of course drug free. So you just really learn, what has to be done to develop the body, because you're just relying on nutrition, sleep, stress management, and really good programming. So that was how I got into it. That was my my start. And then I started blogging just about my journey with fitness and food. I created Your Healthy Hedonista. And it was just Facebook back then. And then, so I got into coaching because organically, women started to message me. I had, I think, 3 or 4 gals say, listen, can you coach us? And I can't remember exactly. I think was I already working myself? I think I was kind of like, I've always kind of coached myself, right? So I work with my husband, JJ, but I've always have a ton of input. Again, being an older athlete, being an athlete my whole life and really knowing my body has just been my I've never completely handed over the reins to everybody because it's my health. And so I learned a lot from him. And so these gals asked me, and I said, well, and it was all online. I was actually in Mexico at the time. And so these gals wrote to me and I said, well, listen, I was so skeptical of online. This was back in early 2013, I think. I was so skeptical. So I said, well, listen, if you can get 10 girls together, I'll put up a thing. If we can get 10 women together and you guys agree to do 6 months, because I didn't believe in these, little chow. I'm like, It's got to be 6 months, right? We're going to go in and we're going to pull the weeds out. We're going to do some work here. We're going to change. And you have to I had all these rules you had to do, right? Because I really didn't know how to bypass that tendency of people to give up after a certain period of time, right? And I'm like, how am I going to help them stay accountable if I'm online, right? Like, how's that going to work? So I made all these rules, and so I started the first program, and I had my husband help me. I said, okay, Jay, like, can I use this program? Can I change it with this? Can you look at the sets, the reps? Like, does this make sense in terms of volume? You know how important volume is, and making sure we're hitting the body and with the right, selection of exercises. And he helped me with my meal plans. When I first started, I used his template, the way his coach taught him. And that's how we started out. And it's evolved ever since. I think it was month 3. It's always month 3. And I remember being in bed, and I showed Jay on my computer. I'm like, oh my God, look at these women. They're totally changing. It's working. Online is working. And he was working, from 8 in the morning till 8 at night at the gym, clients coming in, and you know how that goes. And I was doing everything online. I had 1 hour private calls back in that day. Because again, I was just worried about connection and all of that. And I didn't have the skill set that I had now, where you can really start to get information and exactly what's going on with that client, where you need to go. So it was an hour. So I had 10-hour calls with them. There's no group calls. And then it evolved to two programs every year. And and then I was coaching athletes. I had my first top, pro athlete, Janet Gates. She was in her 50s, natural, right? So I just do natural coaching. And that was my first big client. She was phenomenal, incredible athlete. And I remember being really nervous, wow, like feeling like pressure, like I really have to, I really wanted to do a great job with her because she'd already arrived with such a great track record. And then I just started coaching more athletes. It's very successful with Janet. I've only coached women. I've stuck solely with women, solely with natural, all ages, but I think a lot of older gals gravitated towards me. Number one, because of my own age, my own personal success, and then 2, because I was racking up all of this great success with the 40 plus crowd. And it's the same story, right? Like, I can't believe the changes. It's just, this program changed my life. So it's been a really wonderful evolution. Now I do 2 big groups. I have an assistant that helps me. We just do group calls, big Zoom calls, and everything's now online. So I used to hand out PDFs, and now everything's, of course, with a beautiful, and there's many, many different good coaching platforms. My girlfriend, Hattie Boydell, convinced me to switch over to True Coach, and I've never looked back. It has just brought online coaching to a whole nother level, being able to really have a dashboard of every client and analyze their lifts. That's a big one. I take them through there's a whole mindset curriculum to the program as well. We have a whole curriculum. It's spread over 6 months. It's evolved over the years. One of my coaches, Annie Bedrosian, really helped me with that. She was my assistant for several programs. And I said, listen, can we automate this? Can we systematize it so that we can start improving it instead of reinventing the wheel every time? I'm sure you guys have done that with Revive. And so that's been great. And now I rotate different new coaches into the program to be my assistant, so they can learn, they can be in on the calls, listening to how I coach and navigate, challenging situations, or how I teach some of the mindset work that's so crucial to the big changes and the lasting changes that we need to have. So that's sort of how coaching happened. And it was a great year for me, through COVID, since we'd already been so established with online. So all of our athletes, they all did fantastic. When there was a show, everyone got a pro card. I mean, it's just been really great for us. It's for physique coaches to see athletes that have had to go in and out of gyms and training at home, some of them with not a lot of equipment, some of them with kids at home, to see how strong their mindset was, And of course, Jay and I just had to pivot, which again, I'm sure you had to do the same thing with taking, I alone, at one point in time had 83 clients. And they were all at different levels of, lifting abilities and different goals. And sort of like one week I'd have 10 go from the gym to home. And, one would have one kettlebell, one would have a couple of dumbbells. And so it was just like, I was working around the clock. It was, but we created this whole programming for at-home training, which was, and it was amazing to me too as a coach, because I never used to allow at-home training. I didn't think for women it would be enough to get the change, especially with beginners, with not having that neural drive to push hard, and not having a good weight selection. And already I rely on machines a lot with beginners because they're stable. You just change the pen and you're good to go. So it was a real eye-opener for me to see, wow, athletes could be successful training at home with dumbbells. Of course, all my athletes went and got the adjustables up to 50 and all that stuff. But even my beginners, I was 1.5 months into a new cohort. So they always start in January. And by mid-February, in March, they were almost all at home training. And they all continued to drop. Most of them were on weight loss, so they all continued to progress. It was amazing. So I learned a lot about that as a coach. I learned that when you could get it done in the gym at home, and maybe that was a good call for some people that had really busy lifestyles, because ultimately you want to encourage them to develop some kind of a program, a process that they can be successful on their own long term. So that was great. Two, I discovered that I actually was good at writing at-home programs. So that was good. I had to grow, right? As a coach, I had to grow. You have to really start to play with like supersets and tempo and all of that stuff. And three, I realized how fundamental the mindset work was to progress, and also the nutrition and cardio really was the driving factor. And so now, if I have to make a call between training and cardio, and it's fat loss we're after, sometimes I'll say, listen, I want you to get the cardio in. Whereas before I wouldn't have done that. Before I was very much, no, you got to get the training in. That's the most important thing. And especially for gals that aren't, like I said, don't have that neural drive and can't push hard, and your focus is on fat loss, it's not always the right decision. Again, it's got to be aimed at the individual and the demographic, and what you're actually seeing with movement patterns. And then of course, my mom, who's known as Train with Joan, I also learned a lot working with her too about again, how important mindset is, and how important communication and being really supportive, encouraging is to a person's progress, and looking at the big picture, looking at the long term. I have a sense of urgency. It's certainly how I live my life. Like I have a sense of real urgency now to get done what I need to get done in order to move forward. And sometimes that urgency is not appropriate for some people, right? That could push them, that could maybe push them away from their success. And I think because my mom, because I was so emotionally invested in her, I was really concerned about her health. That's what really drove me to bring her on board to one of my transformation programs, even though I knew it was going to be an enormous amount of work for me. I had a real emotional investment in her being successful with that weight loss, because she was just, headed down the wrong road fast with her heart health. And I really had to, I said to my husband, I said, if I ever thought I was impatient before, I realized how wrong I was. Like I have discovered depths of patience and compassion, and talk about nuanced coaching, like knowing when to pull back, knowing when to put, like just how to get that person to keep moving forward and not to get too frustrated and give up. So I learned a lot from that I've really been able to apply to coaching now. And I'm really grateful for that experience. And of course, I'm grateful for Mom's incredible transformation now. She's, I've learned again, and I've also learned a lot from working with my mother, what's possible for women. So I think before my mom, I might've said, well, I don't know about 70, 70 is pretty old. And I think my oldest client at that time was maybe 59 or 58. And, she had a hysterectomy when she was in her 40s. So there was the hormonal aspect of that. Obese for, it was really hard. It's really hard to find a picture of my mom in her adult life where she's not overweight, really overweight. It's really hard. And so she was, really in that higher BMI for decades, right? Decades. And she wasn't eating a lot of food. And I say that to people all the time. A lot of these, especially women, they put on this enormous amount of weight on not a lot of food. It's why I get frustrated with macro calculators.
Yeah.
Hey, Pascal here. I just wanted to take the moment to talk about our membership site. Inside, you'll find a thriving forum, an extensive exercise library, courses, presentations, and research reviews. All I need you to do is hit the link in the description below and sign up.
I'm like, I don't know who they study, but it's certainly not my demographic that I specialize in. And, there's some very well-known coaches out there that are so disparaging about women. They've got these broken metabolisms or they've ruined their metabolisms by over dieting. And I never say that. I have gals coming to me even in their late 40s. They're CEOs of companies. They've got kids in college. They run a tight ship, financially successful. They're not running around with these crippled metabolisms, on a string about to die.
Yeah.
And with just some coaxing, I'm kind of like, I'm more like what Menno says, right? I know Menno also works a lot with lifestyle clients, and I'm really a fan of first cutting them down, not to stage leanness, but I prefer to get their body on a routine, trim the body fat off, and then go to maintenance. We'll spend like 4 weeks where I just feel like the body is, we're really, dialed in with, various metabolic processes, and also how the person's mind is handling not being on a cut, because that's can often throw a lot of people on a hiccup. And then we start the next plan, and it's very rarely a build. It's usually just a very conservative, increase in calories, but I really look a lot on metrics, your waist, hip, and thigh metrics, your weight, and I teach my gals how to take ab shots. Right, after they get lean, I teach them how to take an ab shot, and I think it's a very fun way for them to monitor their progress, and it's something that you can do for the rest of your life. Like, can I see my abs? Can I not?
Right.
Do I need to dial back? Do I need to tighten up or not? So I really use those to make my decisions. And that's how I do really individual based coaching, is with that data.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many coaches do that, but I know some just go by a picture. Some just go by the scale weight. But I really like to look at all that data. And it also helps me create a degree of separation between the scale weight and emotions. I feel puffy, right? And what's actually happening with that person's body. So, it's, my mom really taught me, working with my mom really taught me that there's unlimited potential with the female body, like even after it's survived, cataclysmic lifestyle for decades. And that it's really important to be really slow with pros, not slow, but really make sure that the client, that we really work together on their mindset around celebrating the now, right? Because for sure with my mom, the only time we did a diet, Steve, was that first year. That first year we full on did a diet. It was a little bit weird and wacky because the first diet I wrote for her was 1,450 calories, she's 200 pounds. And we had a training day and a non-training day. very modest. So not, she always a hard worker, but her waist was like 40 inches. So she's not getting a lot of carbs. But she could never eat it all. Wow. And now what I tend to do is once I see that a client's really trying, we use the My Macros app. And so I can jump on at any time and look at what they're planning. And we do macros per meal, not for the day. Because I'm also trying to teach them, how to create balanced meals. And I guide them too on, I don't know if that's really tasty. What if we, bring a condiment in, or what if we, instead of having all egg whites, can we have some like an egg white with some ham or something in there? So I really love the My Macros app, how it allows me to get in there and do that kind of coaching. So I was looking at her macros, and I mean, she was like 900 calories, and she was trying it, and she said, I'm just full. I remember several times I'd see these coconut chewies, which is in my cookbook. And I said, Mom, you can't eat. What are you doing eating cookies for meal 4? And she said, well, it's in your cookbook. So I figured it was healthy. I couldn't really argue with her with that. And I said, well, at this point, as long as you're getting some calories in, and there is protein in those cookies, we'll call it quit. We'll call it a win. So now what I tend to do is after a couple of weeks, if the client's really not hitting their macros, even if they're progressing, I'll dial it back a little bit just so I have a paper trail of what that client was actually eating, especially for a long-term client like my mom. I wish I'd had adjusted those diets just so I could open her files and see, okay, so we adjusted down to this, and this is what she was able to actually eat. And then we made adjustments and so on. It's with my mom, I actually increased her food, which very rarely happens. I want to underline that I'm not going to be saying, you can eat more food and lose weight. I don't have one client for who that's true. And I've coached, over 1,000 gals to success. We just basically got her eating more protein as she was able to eat more. And she eventually worked her way up to that original diet of 1,450. And then I started to manipulate things, bringing her carbs down and just doing more low days. And then ultimately being able to bring the carbs back up as her waist got down to, 32, 31 inches. I do find significant changes in the female body once we get that waist circumference down and just better body composition. Not always, but a lot. It's my mom really seeing her body change over the long term. She never wanted to lose weight faster. So that first time she lost weight, she went to 155 pounds the first 6 months, and she was happy with that. She was like, it's a miracle. I remember I have these photos I took of her. She was flexing. I somehow managed to get her in her bathing suit outdoors, and I took these fabulous photos of her. And Steve, we were so impressed. We were like, wow, I can see her ab wall, right? We could just see, and there was still some cellulite there and all that, but we could start to see the shape of the breadbasket. We could see like the shoulder, a little bit the shoulder cap and her crazy triceps. We could start to see that shadow there. And we were so excited. And I thought, well, this is great. Maybe she's going to lose another 10 pounds or not, but she's happy here. And so we just sort of left her at calories, and she actually continued to lose a little bit more weight. But when she came down with us, because this was all online coaching, she came down to visit us for a couple of weeks. And pow, when she was with us, really in the routine, because my husband and I were just, I'm sure like you, just really routine with it all. We love our food. We love our protein. It's easy. And so she would see us planning our macros and doing food prep, and she would join in, and her body started to change fast. And I said to my husband, God, if we could just get her here for longer, just think what we could do. Because there's also, and this is something that's also very dear to my heart, with older people. I think our society pays lip service to how well we treat older people. But I saw my grandmother, in a nursing home for the last 3 years of her life. I went there quite a bit to see her, and it's just awful, those nursing homes. I mean, it's just awful. And just seeing older people in general, we're so busy now with our life. There's not a lot of communication happening with grandparents, and maybe on the weekend or once a month or at holidays, but there's not the immersion across generations. And we know that neuroplasticity can be improved just with interaction, learning new things. So it was a big win for me to have my mom learning the app, even though it was a nightmare to teach her how to use it. Using Instagram, I thought, let's get her on Instagram. It'll be a great support system. And I'm always thinking of like that neuroplasticity, like, learning where everything is. And, let's see what happens there. And so when she would come down and be with Jay and I, we're always listening to podcasts like you guys and learning, discussing clients, discussing protocols. She would just change. She would just become brighter, happier, less stressed, less prone to like sort of like that real stressed behavior. Her body would change. She'd get a spring in her step. Scares us sometimes how she swings her leg up over the bicycle and just like, Mom, you are 70, So that's been very interesting too, just how important it is to have that community of people across ages. And I think with doing the group format with my transformation programs, we do that as well because we have these calls as a group, and the women interact, and it really helps to stave off that feeling that you're on your own here, right? Especially if your husband's not doing it, your friends still want you to go out drinking with them. Here you've got a pack of really accomplished, successful women that are all working on, their bodies, their lifestyle, and so it becomes a really great virtual community. And I think COVID taught everyone, virtual relationships can be very real, very, very real if you put effort into them.
For sure. So actually, there's a lot to cover there. You actually covered a heck of a lot of the things I wanted to talk about. That's great. I know you said you could talk, and it was really nice to hear. I mean, that was a really nice kind of really where you started to where you are now, and even like how COVID impacted you. And it's really interesting to know you actually got into the kind of fitness industry at a very similar time to me. In that it was like 2013, 2014 was when I transitioned to being a personal trainer. And online coaching wasn't really a big thing back then at all. So it sounds like you found your own way to keep it personal, which is the same as what we did with our kind of the way we coach. We try and keep that personal aspect because it's key to it. It's like you said, like to create that community, to create that bond, to really troubleshoot for that client as an individual, and everyone has their own issues, and they have, like you mentioned, their own different pieces of equipment that they can have at home and things. So it's something I did want to touch on though, and something you made that I think's really worth just for the listeners to hear, because I think I hear it more from men, but I imagine it's big for females as well. I mean, it's big for females anyway, in terms of like, it's kind of still a bit new for them to be in the gym, lifting, eating protein, and kind of building their body up. But particularly, I guess, probably even more so for the older one. But a lot of men think, once I'm like, I don't know, in my 30s or in my 40s, like I'm past it. It's like, no. And this is your mother who you said, she started lifting after you. So she hasn't been lifting longer than you. She's been lifting for less time.
Yeah, people get a little bit backwards, and she's not a coach either, or a trainer. We say train with Joan more for the inspiration of train with Joan.
And that's her Instagram. If people are listening and aren't aware of her, like she's got a huge following as well.
Yeah, when we walk down the beach with her, people will run up, and her followers are mostly 25 to 45-year-olds. Just I think because that's the demographic for Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because Jay and I are like. We're so eclipsed by my mom. It's just the funniest thing. It's beautiful to see. It's beautiful to see how somebody's journey can be such an inspiration to so many other people.
For sure. And I think it's really nice as well that you have kind of the chef background, and you mentioned it's macro based, but you're making sure people have like the fundamentals each meal. It's not like they're hitting their protein through whey protein through their first meal and then having like a tub of Ben & Jerry's at night, like to hit these numbers, but it's really personalizing every element towards them. And do you think for a lot of these like older females, do you have many who have been going for like a very long time, or do you think there's a lot of kind of the newbie gains because they haven't trained before, so they kind of see a bit of a recomp after that fat loss phase? Or what do you kind of see there? How's their rate of development after like years of doing it, do they still see what you might experience, you think you'd experience when you're younger? Is are there any key differences, I guess, in working with them, I guess is the route I'm going down.
Okay, so older, you mean what age exactly? Because
so,
I'm 50.
Should we say like like not like it's not old, but like 40 plus, say? Is there any
45.
kind of key considerations for that individual, or do you find a lot of the fundamentals tend to cross transfer well?
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, so there's no, I get this question a lot from women, like, help me, I have menopause and you're an expert with girls in menopause. And I'm like, no. Now I put a post up recently because I'm like, God, stop thinking like that, right? Yes, there's a sharp fall off in estrogen, and we know that estrogen is really important for, insulin sensitivity and skeletal muscle. But the female body is incredible at making adjustments in order to continue to function at a very high level with changes in hormones. It happens to girls when they suddenly start having a lot of estrogen, and then they're able to put on muscle even before puberty or function well and eat carbs and all that. And they're able to do the same thing post. So there's nothing specific that we do in terms of nutrition and training for age. It's really based on the individual. So if you have a lot of body fat to lose, it doesn't really matter what your body type is, ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph, the focus is on getting that body fat down. And we know that the more body fat you have and the less muscle mass you have, the less, the less insulin sensitivity you're going to have, the less muscle mass you have. And again, the lower your neural drive, your ability to truly train at high intensity. We know that there's probably going to be less insulin sensitivity there as well. So, I'm really looking at how that person's lifting. So when they apply to work, they're going to send and correct me if I've gone off on a tangent, but they'll look at a couple of lifts, right? I like to look at their squat. If I can tell just by how they're squatting what I've got to work with there, and like a push-up, right? So which is usually like a fail or not. So that kind of tells me what I have to work with. And then also then if they're at home, what kind of equipment that they have. So obviously if they don't have a lot of equipment and their squat mechanics are really poor, I know that, and they're very, very overweight, well, right there. And usually the older a woman gets, gotta be careful how I say this, the older a woman gets, following a normal life, a normal female aging pattern, right? So eating like a regular person, not knowing about protein and how to dose that out, just a regular person. Their appetite their metabolic rate goes down, and absolutely you'll see like more adiposity and less, less muscle mass. Their caloric intake goes down as well. So you'll see all of these, down regulations in the body. I would argue that I don't think it's causal. I think lifestyle, certainly when I see what I'm seeing with females, and I think there was a recent study out, right, that said like, oh, well, sarcopenia could actually be reversed with just some basic, you just got to train, right? Like, hello, and eat properly.
Yeah.
So I'll make a decision based on those factors versus looking at their age. One thing that I do see with if I get two clients writing to me and one is 30 and they have pretty much this similar training and measurements and caloric intake. So I've got a 30-year-old and a 60-year-old, and food logs are kind of funny, right? Like I'm sure you get food logs and you're like, I'm a real detective with food. I've been seeing food as numbers for so long, right? So I'll see something, I'm like, well, that can't possibly have no fat, or like, I don't see the protein. This was a wheat-based product. I don't see any protein logged here. Or like, does that make sense that she ate like 10 grams of beet? I'm just always thinking like that. And So if I get 2 food logs and they're both supposed to be 1,700 calories, when I write a first baseline diet, I don't know how you guys do things, but what I like to do is write a baseline diet. That means the diet's going to be isocaloric. So based on what they said they're eating, I match those calories, but I just abrogate the macros, and I get them on 5 meals, pretty much. 99% do 5 meals. Some do 6 because the protein's so high, and some do 4, maybe just because their calories are so low. But I do try to do 5, just because of how it spreads out throughout the day, eating every 3 meals with most people's sleep schedule. I'll probably, with the younger gal, err a little bit higher. So if she said she was eating 1,750, I'll probably do a diet that's 1,750. The 60-year-old, if I think, I don't think that was a really good food log, I'll probably go down maybe to 1,600 or so. Okay. Just because in my experience, I have not had an older gal not get a diet with that protein and just really not be able to eat the food. So really not, I can't eat that food, right? So the whole 5th meal is just gone, and they're still stuffed on the 4 meals. So, and that I think is less to do, again, like I said, with age, because the gals that we've done the cut and then we reversed, they're eating stupid X factors, not all of them, but a lot of them, Steve. We're talking, they might've started on feeling stuffed at 1,500 calories. We lost 10 pounds of body fat, or we lost 30 pounds of body fat. And now they're eating, X factor. So I call it X factor, how many calories per pound you're eating.
Okay.
So they'll end up, I think most gals will start, anyways, let's not go there. So they'll be eating an X factor of 16 to 20 calories per pound.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
per
is
pound.
Per pound. Right. So, that's very robust. The average person could not keep up with a lot of my older clients, what they're eating. So again, I'm just I'll wait for the science to catch up with what I'm seeing. I just see it again and again and again. And I do think that a lot of the research is, we know there's problems anyways with running research in a college situation with funding limitations and all that, but the demographics totally different as well. And I don't think so I think when people start studying what I'm seeing, it's going to be really exciting. And until that happens, I'm hoping more and more of my clients are getting out there and spreading that real positive narrative that it's not over. 40 and 50 is not older. So I don't really see a difference in age other than maybe that, but I think it's more lifestyle versus more nurture versus nature. Yeah. With food, with caloric intake, in training as well. I'm not seeing a difference. Most of the gals that are older are beginners, not all of them, but beginner in the sense you can be training in the gym. But not purposeful training, not progressive overload, not great range of motion, good biomechanics, that kind of a thing, right? So, you're a beginner until, you could demonstrate to a great degree basic lifts. And I think the ability to create tension, especially on the negative, that's one thing that I really feel kind of demarcates a beginner lifter from a more intermediate lifter, right? So a lot of people, they just don't know how to lower a weight with good tension. It's just kind of missing. Anyway, so so from that standpoint, my younger gals are starting, I think, because there's with Instagram, social media, and just how socialization maybe is a little bit different now. You could be a young girl and maybe be a national level or pro level soccer player, right? So whereas that probably wasn't the case 50 years ago. So they're often coming with some pretty good lifting skills. Cool. And some of my 40-year-olds too are killing it. They'll come with great lifting skills. But it's it's for sure it's less so in the 50 to 60s. Yeah. So I do see that as a difference. So, but then again, it's the same thing. Programming is again, it's more lifestyle, it's more nurture versus nature. That's the situation. So I would adjust the programming based on that, not because they're older per se.
Yeah. Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we pride ourselves on providing personalized service that will take your physique and knowledge to the next level. If you're interested, check the description and sign up. Yeah. No, I really like that answer because, I mean, from a coaching perspective, at least, if you understand the principles, it makes the application then for an older client a little bit more simple in that I think the same way for like males and females, there's not like a huge distinct difference between the two sexes. It's a case of you kind of use the principles that you understand in terms of volume, frequency, exercise selection, what their preferences are, what they want to grow, and you apply that to the male or to the female. Same with the nutrition, like females aren't just small males, but a lot of the fundamentals in terms of how much protein they need and how much fat they consume and those sort of things, they're individual to that person and their body size and what their goals are. And it's less so it's the fat they're female, the fat they're male, or the fat they're old, or the fat they're young. It's like you always have to individualize to the person. It's not like they're special or like a special snowflake, I guess would be the saying that I'm looking for. It's very much you apply your same coaching hat to that 30-year-old as you are to that 60-year-old. Is that fair?
Well, I'm going to be
I saw a face, so.
Well, it's kind of a yes and a no because I actually do really focus on the individual. So in a sense, they are a special snowflake, but not to the point where there's a vast difference in like programming and nutrition.
Yeah.
But you'll often hear me saying stuff at home like, well, I don't think that coach works with women, right? Because I'll see them do something that to me, I'm like, it's too aggressive or too capricious. I tend to be a lot more conservative with like macro changes, for example, because I find the female body can be I love the female body. I mean, it's complicated.
It's harder. The whole
it's
muscle gain, fat loss, it's all harder for females. I agree.
It's harder, and yet they can go a lot of times. Not everyone, right? But the female body can push like, or sometimes I think maybe a guy might not be able to keep up. Like the programming that I do, my husband every now and again will try to do what I do, and he hates it. He's dead.
Absolutely, yeah, he's
dead. And I push my RPE like hard, so it's not because I'm like knitting on the leg press. I'm probably one of the noisiest lifters at the gym, but so it's the ability to handle volume even as I've aged. Just being able to pound volume and a lot of special. Metabolite type training, drop sets, supersets, partials, end range of motion, and stuff like that. But that's again, it's very individual. So part of it is just, so individual in the sense of, but we can't make generalizations, right? So I want to kind of say that, right? So how long has the person been training, and how comfortable are they with pushing a high RPE? Right? Or lifting heavy in general. Like what's the fear factor? I have some gals that are very, very, very nervous, which I am not. So I have to wrap my head around it. They're very, very nervous about squatting on their own. Very, very nervous about unracking a bench press on their own. So making decisions really tailored to where's that person at sort of psychologically, their lifting experience. Some gals, I'll just give them one type of diet day. Why? Because they're struggling with meal planning and adherence, right? So I'm not going to give them 3 types of macro days, whereas I can comfortably run 7 different macro days. Like I can really individualize things. So there's a lot of psychological component on that, and being able to take a step back and say, well, what's the win here? What do I need to accomplish with this client? And then making that decision. And that's how I coach. That's why I mentor my coaches, right? Like I want to know, before we make a macro change with a client, or a program change with this client, I really want to get a good snapshot what's going on with that girl and where she's having trouble with, right? So we're really making sure that we target it for the woman. So there's a lot of maybe psychological or background stuff that comes into play with why we would program or do a diet for a particular individual. It's not just with the body. So there's a lot of individualization there, and maybe there's more psychological differences between men and women. Maybe I don't coach men, but I do kind of head over the shoulder of what Jay's doing with his guys. My husband and I are very different personality types as well. So seeing how we handle training and the stress of dieting and all of that's interesting. And we talk, the two of us every day, we're talking about, we love coaching. We're on our computers all day and we love what we do. So it's not hard. We have no resentment there. So it's a great, I don't know, like a Petri dish of like learning and experimenting and, with clients and what works and what doesn't work. So there is individualization, but it's maybe some of it's based on differences between the sexes. I think a lot more is based on, like I said, nurture versus nature. And then maybe there's a little bit of nature, right? Like again, women we're smaller, less muscle mass. We tend to be able to handle higher volume, more. Even my strong athletes, you could say, oh, well, maybe that's because they're not really, aren't able to push heavy weight. But I've got some, USAPL lifters. One of them is one of my coach, Lizzie Picardi. She's little, she's 5 feet tall or 5'1". Sorry, Lizzie. But she's, she deadlifts, I don't know, like 280 pounds for sets of 8 or something, right? Like she's just strong. She does chin-ups with 45 pounds. That's almost half of her body weight. No problem. I mean, she's so strong and she can go forever. She loves doing these crazy, I'm always trying to get her to pull back on her cardio, and she loves doing these, 3-hour bike rides on the weekend, coach. I'm like, can we pull back a little bit? We're in prep. Where are we going to go with cardio if you're already doing 3 hours on the weekend? So there, maybe there's something there, and with just that less muscle mass on the frame, probably a difference in insulin sensitivity, probably, at least in terms of load of food. But again, then I have to catch myself and say, well, I have so many gals, I just pound so much carbs. I mean, just crazy high levels. And my husband and I, he's 11 years younger than me. And we're kind of always on the same X factor when it comes to dieting and building. And he's, half Haitian, been an athlete his whole life, like squeaky clean habits. I'm 50, menopause. I mean, but we have the same X factor. How many calories per pound it takes. In fact, my X factor was higher than him on our last prep. I was eating more than him per pound, significantly more. So, but in terms of how we're socialized, especially again, the older gals, I see vast differences, right? So for instance, just not being encouraged to be athletic, right?
Right.
And not, maybe when you're younger, just, not picking up things and moving things and just really maybe being, really in your body, and taking full advantage of its mechanical potential. What I find for squats, for example, I always see girls feeling good squat mechanics the same way. And it's like their ability to maintain their brace and their tension at the deep flex position, the truly flex position of the joint. So it's going to be at the bottom. So you could look at it that way, and the muscles are at their maximal stretch position, right? And when we get close to parallel, you'll see them they'll lose their brace. And some gals will come and train with me at my gym here in Tulum, and I'll be behind them like, okay, fire your glute meats, and they'll fire them at the top and spread the floor, and we'll go down, and they get halfway down and pow. They lose all tension there. Whereas and a lot of gals will get coached by trainers. This happens all the time. Oh, you lack flexibility, right? Oh, my hip, I lack flexibility in my hips. So they're getting all these, you got to work on your hip flexibility or ankle mobility. One of my coaches, Annie, had this trainer that was like, oh, you can't squat because you have ankle flexibility. Annie's a yoga teacher. Like she has no problem with dorsiflexion. It's weakness. It's the inability to maintain tension as the muscle gets stretched, right? That's what I'm seeing. So I coach that. But again, I think it's more a factor of how we're socialized versus the actual anatomy. Because of course, once we correct that, it's and you can see, right, when your athlete suddenly gets it, right? Like they're kind of wobbling going down and you're like, oh, okay, that doesn't look right. And you're looking at their back angle and you're getting them to track bar path and spread the floor and all that stuff. You give them all the box squats and maybe squats from pins and things to get them confident and stronger at the bottom of the lift. And then they suddenly get it. And you just know, oh, we're going to put on 20 pounds on the bar in the next 6, so you just know that their lifts are going to just skyrocket because now they're able to maintain tension as they descend. So, and then of course their mind starts to change. They start being afraid of the squat and having a weight on their back, and they get confident. Same thing with the bench. Most girls cannot keep tension on their musculature as they bring that bar down. They just drop it, right? Or they try to bounce. So I give them a ton of tempo work, right?
Yeah,
Tons of tempo, long pauses. Like you're going to learn how to stay tight at the bottom. Anyway. So there, yes and no.
I know where you're coming from. I guess, and I completely agree with everything you said there. Like women normally can handle more volume, and like the various things you're talking about there, I think make a lot of sense. I guess I'm coming from the perspective of some people are like, I don't know, a woman has to train with, I don't know, not high volume, like certain exercises are unique to women, but you're like talking about a squat, a bench press, like men and women are using like the same principle, fundamental, like compound movements. Is just the application then is going to be individualized into how are they recovering, how they're responding to it, that sort of thing. Same like calorie deficit, it works. It's not a case of like, I don't know, you have to go on a special somewhat diet or something. It's like the same kind of principles in terms of like getting there works. I was interested actually, is something you monitor with your clients' step counts, or do you get an awareness of like their non-exercise activity thermogenesis? Just because from what you're saying, I wonder if that's something they really change, because to have that many calories, I imagine like that X factor you were mentioning, I wonder if a lot of them like change their lifestyle to be way more active.
Yeah, we do step counts for sure. I think it's been a couple of years now. I like to try things out myself. So of course, that's the beauty of listening to podcasts and reading articles, is you get exposed to all this information. And at first I thought, step counts. I remember reading about steps way back when. Christian Thibodeau, T-Nation, that was like the site that I used to get a lot of information from. And I remember him talking about how important it was to do steps. And back in the day when I first started, I used to do a lot of steps naturally, because I lived in Boston, which is a walking town. But I never really pursued it for years and years and years. And then, I think 2 years ago, we decided to start tracking that. And I think I was listening to something that you were interviewing somebody on that. So we got our little watches and started to track steps. And I actually fell in love with the psychological benefit of it. It was another metric to own, and you kind of relax, knowing that you'd hit that and that you weren't, adapting by doing less. As the diet progressed. And then as a coach, when I started to dispense that steps, it really became a very powerful tool, in the sense that some people, they maybe can't change their cardio. They can't do more cardio, but we can monitor their steps.
Yeah.
And again, also looking at things that you could maintain it for the long term for lifestyle clients. It was just a really, really powerful tool, and something that the client can get excited about. And I like numbers. I think for a lot of people, having something that, is measurable and they can see it and have that feeling of accomplishment. It's a great box to tick, to put in people's toolbox. Let's look at this. Let's keep it constant.
Yeah.
I actually will, on a diet phase, I usually start people at 3,000 steps, kind of. That's my sort of baseline. Let's start at 3,000. And then once we start to hit stalls, I'll tend to jump that up. So I usually go 3,000 to 5,000. And then eventually we'll go up to maybe 7, 8. And at the top, we'll go up to 10, right? At the top end, we go up to 10. And then when we do a reverse diet, we dial that back. So once the cut's done, we actually will dial that back. And how much we dial it back depends on the client, how lean they got. If they didn't get super lean, we're probably always going to be doing some cardio and a step count, maybe 5,000 or something, and maybe 5 days a week of 20, 25 minutes of cardio, something like that. Right. If they don't get really lean, but some people go down. My gals that are building, they'll go down to 0. I'll go down to 0, no steps. I'm just I'll just lie in my bed
Just
and
sleep.
work on my computer. Yeah. Well, it's like, it's incidental, right? I've actually go down to less than 2,000 when I really work at it.
I don't know how you get them that low.
I'm on my computer all day. I'm telling you, right? I'm like, every now and again, I'll go to the beach, I'll take a picture, and that's usually like a cardio or something. Or if I'm my off season, I'll take my moped. But so I do like steps a lot for that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I also look at heart rate
Okay.
during training. It's another way to monitor clients' intensity and to teach them. So I mean, and there's a difference, right, Steve, between I have athletes that they've been training, they know intensity. I mean, you just give them the program and the green light and they just go kill it. These sort of details are a bit more for the more beginner person that doesn't know how to be an athlete yet. They just think they're doing another diet. And I'm like, no, you're not. We're going to turn you into an athlete. That's what I want. We stop dieting and we go to the gym with purpose. And so we'll look at heart rate. Like, how long is it taking you to do this training? If it's taking you 2 hours, we got to talk about how you're setting things up. These are 60-minute workouts, maybe 70 minutes with warm up and cool down and whatnot. But I want you moving through these and really paying attention to the rest period. So what's your heart rate? Where do you get your heart rate at on leg day? Do you get it up to, anywhere kind of high, like at least 135 beats per minute? Or I've got some gals get their heart rate up to 170 beats per minute, 165 beats per minute in a squat session, right? That's easy to do if you're really killing it. So we'll look at that, how long it took you, how many calories you burned. Again, not for the purpose of burning calories, but how hard are you pushing in this workout? So we'll coach them through that and get them excited about getting those numbers to change. And it's another way to look at progress. Are you getting better? Are you getting stronger? Are you getting fitter? So
interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I think we have been an hour, and I'm sure we could keep talking for ages here, Michelle, but I do want to let you get on with your day, and I want to thank you for coming on. And actually, just it's really cool to hear about your coaching process, and if anything was to be taken home from that, how individualized it is, how you're looking into what people are eating, when they're eating, like what are the different people's, like even down to like heart rate, how is that appropriate for that level of advancement? Do we need to be looking at something else, taking that individual into consideration, which is what true coaching is. And unfortunately online, that can definitely go. So it's really cool to know you've actually got like a group doing it, but you can dig into the individual level at this detail, which I think is fantastic. And then obviously the fact that like older generations, particularly women, can go and flourish and develop amazing physiques and ultimately be healthier, happier, and in control of their bodies. And I think it's great that you're educating that demographic, and also like lots of the listeners here who maybe don't fit that, they can still learn from the information and content you're putting out. So yeah, thank you for coming on. If people want to learn more, where can they head, Michelle?
We post a lot of information on our coaching platform, The Wonder Woman Official. And then I post a lot as well on my Instagram, Your Healthy Hedonista. And our website's getting revamped, so there'll be a lot of articles and information there. And we also have plans next year for a podcast. I'm writing a book with my mother. So that'll be out next year. That's going to be through Penguin Random House. So that's going to be really exciting. Cool. Hardcover book, yeah. So
sorry, I remember. Yeah, we were going to bring it up, but at least it's coming now. Maybe once it's further in the works, we can get you on again and talk about it even more.
Yeah. So, anyways, those will be the channels: website, Instagram, a lot right now, and then eventually the book and podcasting for sure. Next year is going to be something that we're excited to sink our teeth into. Yeah. And we've got some curriculum happening too that will be available through NAS Academy. And that will be in sort of mid 2022 will be coming out. So people can take courses and learn how to do macros and create recipes and meal plans. So we really want to help a broader audience to be confident with that stuff. Thanks for having me on. It's been great. I mean, I listen to you all the time.
Yeah, that's great. I'll make sure that's all linked below so people can go check that out. And yeah, thank you again for coming on, and we'll talk to you guys soon. So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Florm. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.